In the quiet hills above San Francisco Bay, a little boy named Bill Armstrong learned early that life could turn on a dime. It was autumn 1982 when his father's voice fell silent forever. 10-year-old Billie Joe stared out his bedroom window as the world dimmed. The cancer that stole his father's life left an empty chair at the dinner table and a hollow ache in his heart. His mother, Ollie, a waitress at a local diner, remarried in the months that followed, a man none of the children could accept. Young Billy retreated into music for comfort, scribbling angry lyrics and humming melodies in the dark. He even whispered one night to his mother, "Wake me up when September ends," never knowing those words would become a song of survival years later. In those days, he clung to the beat of the radio and the strings of his first blue guitar, finding in punk records and schoolyard jam sessions the refuge he couldn't find at home. By age 10, fate guided Billy to Mike Dirnt, a scrawny kid at his elementary school with a killer bass groove and a matching hunger for escape. The pair became inseparable, passing notes in class about garage shows and sharing mixtapes of 70s punk. At 14, Billie Joe poured his resentments and dreams into his first written song, a blistering punk plea titled "Why Do You Want Him?" aimed at the stepfather he resented. With Mike on bass and their friend Trey Cool crashing drums, the band Sweet Children was born in basements and garage spaces. Every Saturday, they practiced under flickering lights, drawing courage from raw chords and shouted choruses. Billy fell in love with performing, the rush of bright stage lights, the taste of adrenaline, and he knew school had become a cage. In 1989, just shy of graduating, he slipped out the back of Pinole Valley High School for good, guitar slung over his shoulder and destiny ahead. The early 90s saw Billie Joe and Green Day, as Sweet Children would soon be renamed, crisscross California in a rattling old van, sleeping on floors and crooning love songs to strangers in dank clubs. In tiny restaurants where his mother once worked, he now played headlining sets for a few bucks a night. There were victories to be proud of. The first single on vinyl, nodding fans piling in shoulder to shoulder, the pride of seeing a record he'd poured his heart into at a local shop. But it was still a scrappy dream, and the future was uncertain. The band lived hand to mouth, trading hot dogs for hotel rooms, and every night on stage, teenage Billy felt the weight of all he had sacrificed. A childhood of stability traded for chords and dreams of escape. Then, in 1994, everything changed. Dookie, Green Day's third album, erupted onto the scene like a bomb. The skate punk anthems of rebellion they recorded in a tiny studio became the soundtrack of a generation. MTV thrummed with "Basket Case," and suddenly Billie Joe found himself catapulted into the stratosphere of fame. One day, he was selling screws at the hardware store. The next, he was headlining stadiums. Yet in the flash of cameras and screams of sold-out crowds, he felt a strange dissonance. The punk kid, who used to sneak into illegal shows, now wore a platinum record around his neck, and some old friends accused him of selling out. In dusty club corridors he once knew, whispers followed him. At 924 Gilman, the very punk venue where he grew up, he was no longer welcome because he had signed to a major label. Offstage, life was upending at home as well. Billy married his girlfriend Adrienne at age 22, a quick 5-minute ceremony at a courthouse in San Francisco. They promised each other the world over and, 2 weeks later, learned Adrienne was pregnant. When their first son, Joey, arrived early in March 1995, Billie Joe held him like a miracle, but the moment was laced with panic. The doctors discovered a defect in Joey's spine. In a quiet, neonatal intensive care unit, with machines beeping softly, Billie Joe kept vigil as surgeons repaired the gap in his son's back. For the first time, he wept openly. This tiny life was far more precious to him than any encore could ever be. In the silence of that hospital hallway, he understood the weight of love and fear in a way music couldn't quite reach. Joey's recovery was steady, his bright eyes a reminder to his father of what was truly important. Professionally, the late 90s were turbulent. The follow-up albums, Insomniac and then Nimrod, were rawer, darker, reflecting the band's anger at fame's fallout. Billie Joe struggled with panic attacks, a tension that found release in songs like Brain Stew. The band had grown up overnight and was now racing like madmen to keep pace. By 2000's Warning, sales had dipped, and critics were sniffing that their spark was gone. In private, the bandmates were worn thin. Billie Joe later admitted that around that time Warning came out, we had to evaluate our situation and our relationship as a band. The idea of quitting fluttered in his mind like an uncomfortable truth. In the dim back seat of tour vans, the three friends would trade worried glances, wondering if this was the end. Even as Green Day wavered, Billie Joe found himself heavier with doubt. He watched Midwestern nights blur through the windows, on crowds that sang karaoke back at him, and wondered if the boy who once sang in hospital halls had lost his way. Sometimes he would find a quiet corner after a show and stare at the city lights, hands trembling from too many drinks backstage. A numb voice inside him wondered who he really was, global rock star, or just a punk kid who never wanted any of this. His wife Adrienne was pregnant again in 1998, and Jake Danger was born that September. At home, he experienced slumbering joy, watching his young sons play in the yard. Yet the tour bus loneliness lingered. He missed bedtime stories and milestones. However, the victory came at a private cost. Billie's battle with anxiety and addiction continued backstage. He had learned how to be a performer, but he never really learned to be at peace. As the tours kept coming, so did the nights alone with a bottle. He started popping pills to kill off anxiety and insomnia, then mixing them with Jack Daniels for courage. For a long time, he told himself he was in control. Liquid courage, he called it, even carrying a backpack full of vials. But each morning, he'd wake up feeling more hollow, wondering how much time had been stolen by hangovers and blackouts. One night in Las Vegas, pushed beyond the edge, he jumped into the crowd, shattering his guitar against the stage floor, shrieking at the lights. Fans and bandmates were stunned. This wasn't part of the show. It was a breakdown in Technicolor. By late 2012, the crisis could no longer be ignored. On a hot September night at a festival, he climbed on stage and hesitated, voice slurred and eyes unfocused. He pointed at the audience and screamed words that the broadcast didn't pick up. Mid-show, he abruptly ended the set and vanished. The next morning, the world buzzed with rumors as he quietly checked himself into rehab. In the sterile rehab rooms, away from microphones and flashing bulbs, Billie Joe confronted his demons. He trembled in withdrawal, the quiet mornings a far cry from roaring crowds. But here, admitting he had a problem became his new rebellion against pain. He spent days writing in a journal, trying to articulate what he needed to heal. He apologized to Adrienne in letters, sobbing over the hurt he'd caused. When he emerged, something had changed. The edgy cynic had been tempered by experience. Sobriety became his new stance. He looked at his sons and saw how fortunate he was to still be around. On tour again in 2016 with Revolution Radio, his music had a raw purpose. The songs barked anger at the world, but also whispered hope. Billie told audiences mid-set that we're still breathing, not as a brag, but as a testament. In interviews, he spoke candidly of anxiety and admitted it was okay to struggle. On stage, he moved with a clarity that hadn't been there before, every raspy lyric earned. Today, Billie Joe stands just a little taller under the stage lights, older but not weary. Lines have settled around his green eyes, and in them lies the weight of all he's seen. He still writes about broken summers and lost heroes, but also about redemption. He's even tried new shapes, a Broadway production of American Idiot, acting parts in movies, a coffee line. Yet everything he does echoes that kid from Rodeo, California, chasing a chord that felt like home. When he looks out at faces singing back his words, he no longer feels haunted by ghosts. Instead, he knows each song is a scar turned into a story, and that every fear he felt became a bridge to someone else's heart. His journey has been tragic, yes, but more than that, it has been real. And as the curtain falls on another show, Billie Joe Armstrong, ever the survivor, still finds the courage to dream up one more song. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on to never miss a video.